and welcome again to another edition of the Philly Factor. I'm your host, Paul Perrello. The art of communication, it really is an art to communicate. I don't care what anybody says, there really is a lot that goes into it. We take it so for granted. My next guest knows a lot about communicating. For more than 4 decades, he has been in front of the camera and behind the camera. He's been on the radio and television, and now serving as Director of Public Affairs at Virtua Health in New Jersey. He is also a 1986 graduate of LaSalle and a good friend. I'd like to welcome to the program Joe Bisicchia. Joe, always a pleasure to see you. It's been a while since we've seen each other.
Oh, Paul, it's so good to see you.
Yeah, same
It
here.
is so good to see you, and I can't begin to even tell you how much you matter to me and my profession. So thank you for all of your inspiration.
Well, thank you very much for your kind words. I do appreciate that. Let me tell our viewers a little bit about Joe. Joe writes of our shared dynamic, an honorable mention recipient of numerous awards. He's written 5 published collections of poetry. I can't even write one book. You've written 5. That's quite an accomplishment, and I applaud you and congratulate you on that. He also has composed over 300 individual works that have been published in over 100 publications. Joe's background includes being an award-winning television host, reporter, and producer, a high school English teacher, and an award-winning card game member. We're going to have you come back and talk about that factor and faction of your life. But since 2010, he's been Director of Public Affairs at Virtua Health, where he is also a practicing excellent certified clinical coach. Joe earned his BA at LaSalle in 1986, currently working on his Master of Fine Arts degree at Lindenwood University, Missouri. Where do you find the time to fit it all in, Joe?
Just it's a blessing. And it's funny, you mentioned Paul, we're talking about communication, and then I want to be clear, nobody has a halo over their head when it comes to communication. I can think of my kids and my wife saying, "Wait a minute, didn't I tell you this?" And then I'm like, "Oh yeah, I guess you did. I forgot."
I've heard that story numerous times too, and have used that answer as well. Um, I want to begin because I started out saying poetry and the art of communication and communication. Yes, well, no one has really wrote the definitive book on communicating and communication. It is an art form, and it's a constantly evolving art form. But poetry is used as a form of communication. But what got you started in this area? I mean, given all of your accomplishments, if I were to say back in 1986 or whatever year you were in one of my classes at LaSalle, that Joe Bisicchia would be going down the road of poetry, I would say, no, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, no, I guess I didn't either. I guess I always was drawn to communication, and I think it's probably some of the same DNA you've had, Paul, where you're like thinking, okay, how do we communicate and then also bring a community together? And that was always a part of my background. I mean, in the sense of like, okay, whether we're on the stage at the Mask or if we're doing things on TV production or on film, Brother Jerry's class. I can remember Dr. Barchak's class. He just did a quick little thing on the board where it said communication, and it was like the communicator, the message getting to, and did it get there, and how do you make sure that it's all basic stuff. But when you think about it, Paul, what we're talking about, and this is when it began for me, and that was from the first moment I came out and started crying, because we're all made to communicate. We're all communicative beings. So that's when it started. I actually did write, my very first poem was in the grimoire. For those English buffs at LaSalle, you'll know we had LaSalle is the place. I'm going to tell you the dynamic that I had in learning communications and having it be welded to English in many ways, and then having a museum downstairs that I just go and get lost in the paintings, and then have the chapel, the thought of spirituality. Paul, I was a work study student of yours, And so you weren't in the classroom at the time. It was the beginning of the semester. And as a work study student, and I worked overnight at UPS, so it was kind of like really shot. So I could blame it on that. But I remember waiting for students to come into the class because I was going to show them the board, but they weren't coming in because it was the very beginning of the semester. And I was sitting there for like several hours, and then after a while, just looking at the floor. And I guess at that time I was 19, and I realized for some crazy reason that I was going to die one day. And that affected me in a positive way because I realized, you know what, I'm going to meet God. I'm going to see God. I'm going to see God. We're going to talk. And I'm wondering how much of that is going to happen that I actually am seeing that already in my daily life in what I'm doing. So the combination of all of that was brewing in me to be an artist in many ways because I was blessed to be in the honors program there. And I have wonderful honors program teachers, Dr. Lautz, Dr. Curlin, Dr. Rossi, and it was all modern European history, and it was all tied into the Renaissance and all of that. And then you throw in Brother Jerry, and we're doing all these wonderful things about movies and Chaplin, and the end of City Lights, modern times, and all the things that are there with pathos and this human element to us. So it was only a matter of time, Paul, that I would start writing poetry, even though I would go on and write. You know what? One of the best teachers I ever had was a Norbertine brother in high school at St. John Newman, and he taught me to type. He had the yardstick, Brother Joe Mulholland. I'll always remember and always be grateful for him because I learned how to type. So I said I worked to you that I worked overnight at UPS while I was at LaSalle. I had to do a lot of papers in the last minute. I had to learn how to trust my instinct and write and communicate. And that helped me for later when I would get into being a sportscaster, a newscaster, and then a reporter. I was really blessed. So I guess maybe I was a writer back then too.
Yeah. And yet the word poetry just conjures up so many different images and ideas for people. And for many people, it's a genre, it's a form of writing that is out of reach for many people. I mean, both of us coming from South Philly, I never would in a million years um, would expect that South Philly, Paul Perrello, Joe Bisicchia, and poetry would all be used in the same sentence because poetry was something else that was something that other people did. It really, I mean, I could see myself writing a book, I could see you writing, a book, but poetry was not necessarily part of our DNA or our fabric of growing up in South Philly, but yet it really has become part of your life.
It's so funny you say all that, Paul. I can think of a couple things jump to mind. Of course, the legendary Jerry Blavat. And
Yeah.
I can think one of his really good friends was Nick Virgilio, who was a spectacular haiku poet out of Camden. And we all share the same DNA. And as a kid, there was a place for me in South Philly called Bridge Hill. Bridge Hill was where we would all go sledding. Bridge Hill is where the statue of Walt Whitman is on Broad Street.
Mm-hmm.
And we would crash into the Walt Whitman. We'd look up there and into his hat to see if there were birds nesting because there often were. But we didn't know what Walt Whitman was. We knew that there's this bridge that is named after him. And here it begins. You've touched on something that is so important about poetry. And I would love to address that right now because it does tie in directly to communication. And that is, shame on a sense of poetry if it is so esoteric and over people's heads. And if you feel that way, if you happen to be stumbling upon this, and you certainly feel that way, because I hear so many people say to me, they'll say it point blank, I hate poetry. And I don't blame them because sometimes you read it and be like, whoa. I'm going to say that's not all of poetry. There's more to poetry than that. Poetry, and I'm not pulling this out of any kind of dictionary. I'll just define it the way I know it right now at this moment in time, Joe, at age almost 62. Poetry is just that dynamic of communication of self, of all the world, spiritual, universal, God, and each other. And how are we trying to put something into words that expresses what we feel? And how do we share that? In other words, it's art. It's art like putting oil on a painting. A lot of paintings are just like, you don't understand what's going on there. That doesn't mean you shouldn't get into painting. And you know what? It's art. Art means since the days before the days we were putting drawings in caves, we needed to, as human beings, have this sense of catharsis to make art and then to share art. This is all the dynamic of communication that we are as human beings, that it's not just here for survival. And by the way, it is. We need to communicate to survive. It's also twined with something that is eternal. And I know that's hard to put into words. And if I sounded too gosh darn esoteric with all that, forgive me. Hit me with another question, Paul, so I can go off on some other rail.
um, so in this day and age, I just had a conversation with a friend yesterday about publishing books and how things have changed in the publishing world. Not only 5 years ago, but it's a much different world than it was even 10, 20, 50 years ago. So you publish your first book, and then you have four others that come after it. So what has the whole experience been of publishing your work? I mean, it's one thing to write poetry, and for you and maybe close friends, relatives, your family see it, but now it's out there in the world, and the internet has done tremendous things as well in getting your work out to the people. 20 years ago, I mean, 45 years ago when I was at LaSalle, there was no internet. So this was all foreign. This was all, space age stuff back then. But today it's sort of taken for granted. It's a given that, we have the internet. But what's it like for you now to know that people, whether they're from South Philly, Germantown, New Jersey, Shanghai, Iceland, they're all seeing your work. I mean, what's that like for you? How do you put that in perspective?
Well, we're all connected, all of us, good and bad, everybody. That's the way I've always felt about it. It's my mom used to have a line, and when we see someone struggling, she would always say, "There, but for the grace of God, go you." And it's true. I mean, it's like it's we're all connected. And regarding publishing, because that's a whole other topic, and certainly,
Sure.
goodness, please, anybody, if you want to talk publishing, I'm glad to talk shop with you, please. I have one word for you when I say publishing. I'll say baseball. Why did I say baseball? Well, when I was in grade school, I had this crush on this girl, Paul, and I couldn't talk with her. I was so shy because I wasn't a great communicator, and being able to talk with her, she was very pretty. And I was like, I just couldn't do it. But then I forced myself. I said, I'm going to take the baseball mentality. I'm going to look at every day as 4 at bats, 5 at bats, and how did I do? And I would hang it on the wall, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I struck out 4 times today, or I got a bunt single. She smiled at me, or something like that. I share that because our world is filled with failures. And when you talk about publishing, I said baseball. Baseball, I brought that up because it's failures. You get 3 successes out of 10, meaning 7 failures, and you're in the Hall of Fame. So how do you handle failures? You just keep doing it. You just keep doing it. So that's going to be my advice to anybody that wants to get published. Keep writing and keep submitting. I never would have thought that there were many places out there that would want it. But the human dynamic of us wanting to share art is that there are people that want to share it with you. But there's a lot of rejection. And you should never, ever make it be something that's part of you. You know what, Paul? I did do. I want to read a real short poem that I wrote. It was
Sure,
one of the
please,
first
please
poems.
do.
It was one of the first, and most of my poems aren't this short, but this particular poem was one of the first poems that I had published. One of the very first. I think it was either the first or the second, outside of the one from Grimoire. Simple. Tree in the forest. So a tree in the forest. What's the line about a tree in the forest? What comes to mind when you hear? Okay, that's like the tree in the forest. Does it make a sound? Right.
Right. Hmm.
So now is it going to be able to communicate? Is it going to be able to make us? Has anybody heard that Dr. Barchak diagram on the board? Communicator, recipient. No, but if a tree falls in the sound in the forest, nobody heard it. So it's called Tree in the Forest. Simple. Sally sang. That's a play off in terms of Sally sold seashells. Well, Sally sang. No one savored the sound. It was unheard. That's the way you kind of feel when you send out poems and you get rejected and rejected and rejected and rejected. I have thousands of rejections, Paul. I keep a record of them all. Because when you're publishing, you do have to keep a record of what you got going. So this way, you know the history of a poem if it's going somewhere else. Thousands. In fact, just yesterday, I got a poem published by an entity that the poem was already rejected 21 times by the other
Wow.
publisher. Okay, so Sally sang, no one savored the sound. She settled, having sung for herself and the sky. That was published back in 2013 by Blackheart magazine. No one savored the sound. She settled, having sung for herself and for the sky. Meaning, and this is far beyond poetry, this is where everything in life is poetry. How many people are like that work as a janitor, that work as an architect, that work as a police officer, that are a doctor, and time goes by and you're like, what did I do? What did I do? The reality is life is filled with challenges. Just do what you have to do as if you're doing it for God. Um, the rewards are immense. So there you go. I started getting into spirituality, and I won't defend that at all because spirituality is a huge part of why I write. It's a huge part, the only part of why I would communicate as a being. And I don't say this as any kind of hoity-toity person on a pulpit. No, I say this as a spiritual being that needs God. God has been a driving force in my writing, has been a driving force in my life, in everything. And at LaSalle, it was that way as well. And God bless Brother Jerry for kind of like holding me down to make sure I can, work through all of that. But through his example of what it's like, and all the other Christian brothers, and the dynamic of seeing a charism of people working together in a spiritual way, that matters because that's life.
Sure.
That really is life. And you're in that, Paul. You
Mhm.
always taught with a sense of caring. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. Thank you. It's I never thought that I would get into education. And again, if it wasn't for Brother Jerry coming to me one day and say, "Hey, would you be interested in teaching a class?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm only a year or two older than the senior in the class." He said, "Don't worry about it." And I've taught as long as I've been in the world of broadcasting, and you talked about fulfillment and things. Um, you know, education, teaching has been so so fulfilling, more than I ever would have imagined or would ever thought. More so than 40 some years in broadcasting. Education and teaching has been and continues to be my passion. So I'm truly blessed and thank Brother Jerry for that. I sort of lucked into it.
Well, that's a
Um,
gift, Paul. Let me just extrapolate on that because there's so many young people today, and they're at LaSalle and everywhere,
mhm.
but especially the ones at LaSalle. I care most about them right now, but all of them, okay? They have to learn how to communicate. Much of that is in the written word. English teachers and yourself, you taught it. You taught about the dynamic of the voice and how important it is to be able to communicate. How important is it to going to be able to talk to a person? I can't tell you how important it is to communicate. I mean, it might even be that you're talking with a difficult person online on the phone about customer service. You know what? Did you ever think of saying first, excuse me, what's your name? Oh, Paul. Yeah, Paul, listen, I'm having a hard time with this bill. You don't realize what happens as soon as you do that. Now you have a dynamic with Paul on the phone,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
Paul feels a little sense of accountability. And there's two humans together now. And maybe Paul might go a little further to figure out that customer service problem you're having. That's communication. And if we could learn to put words together, and let me share this way too. Please, if you are intimidated about the written word and you're thinking poetry, I don't want to get involved with poetry. Know that the best poems right now, the best poetry is often written by those in prisons and who do not know how to write,
Mhm.
supposedly. No, but they're connected with what it matters to communicate. That's what I would encourage because your fulfillment in life, your quality in life is going to be exponentially better by simply being able to communicate. So that's the biggest skill of communication. So I think that our major was aptly named
Yeah,
communication arts.
yeah.
Um,
Um, we have about 8 or 9 minutes left, and needless to say, two of us, I know, we could go on for the next 2 or 3 hours. But the world is changing, no secret there, and every day there has got to be, if not one, a dozen different stories about AI. And everybody thinks AI is the godsend and it's going to be the be all and the end all. But it is kind of scary because I know of someone who, was writing a paper for school and proceeded to, say, well, I go to, whatever app he was on and just had the app correct the grammar and the English and all this other stuff. And I'm like, that really takes the human factor out of it. I mean, I don't know how we learn to correct our mistakes or correct our grammar or correct spelling. Big pet peeve of mine. But because they just turn it over now to AI and all these apps that are out there. So, what's your feeling on AI in this wonderful world of communication today?
well, we just talked about failure and how important that is. It is so important in communication. Interestingly, I mean, people could be giving a speech and stumbling all over the place, but you know what? That's okay because
Mm-hmm.
it's still happening. It's going through it, and we as listeners love it because someone is enduring and connecting. You know, if it was an AI speech, it would be perfect.
Sure.
It'd be fake. You know what? On the other hand, I mean, thank God the hammer was invented. You know, now if we didn't have the hammer, how would we get nails to go into the wood? The reality is, it's a tool, but goodness gracious, don't let the tool own you. You got to know how to use it. You got to know how. Don't let it deprive you of what the joy is, and that's the journey. Don't let it deprive you of the journey. I mean, a journey of being in love is a journey of mistakes and communication. It's not this all packaged thing that is like, okay, now I'm in love and it's done. Nah, no. So AI is there. I say use it if there's ways that can make your job easier, that you don't have to nail something into the wood. You have something to help you with it. But don't ever let it take, don't be that generous that you give away your soul because you want to do something easier. No, make the mistakes and do it.
Yeah. One thing that I like to do on the program is, in the 5 minutes that we have left, Joe, have you share your advice to students who may be watching this in their dorm room, they may be in the lounge in the communication building watching the show.
Mhm.
And I think it's so important to have people like yourself who have not only sat in those same seats that we sat in, be it a different building, but what could you say to them? I mean, whether they're freshmen, whether they're senior, um, what type of advice can you give them? Sometimes they just sit there and they feel so overwhelmed by everything. They're sitting there saying, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right major for me? Am I at the right place at the right time? What type of advice can you offer them, Joe?
Okay, I'll try to do best I can. Here we go. You ready? So first of all, great poet said we're all the same age on the inside, and that's true. So we're all connected. It's just a moment ago I was there, and then it'll be a moment. God bless you. You'll be at this old age. Walk the halls and don't look at the floor too much.
Mm.
Have your eyes open. Acknowledge other beings. Recognize them. Smile. At times you're going to have to be protective. But what am I talking about? What I'm talking about is enjoy the journey. It's a communication journey. Enjoy who you are right now, this moment you are. Be open to it. Trust. Trust it's going to work out. Don't be afraid. Uh, get involved. You have weaknesses. Hello. Everybody does. Work on them. Uh, if you feel like your voice may never be good enough to be on radio, work on it. Hello. So go for it. Do that. You feel like you can't write. You know, a great teacher, I'll leave him unnamed, said, you know what, Joe, I need you to go to the Shiki Center back then. And it was good. I needed to learn some points on how to write. Afterwards, it was like, oh my gosh, goodness, I didn't realize you were in the honors program and you know how to write. And I'm like, that's okay. I needed help. And I still do to this day, big
Mhm.
time. Need help. We're all in this together, please. And then, please, not Joe in a pulpit, but if I don't say it, I failed. And that is give it to God because God's got a plan for you. It's big. It's big as now. It's big as who you are, this moment. Enjoy it. It goes by so fast. You're going to be 30 thinking you were just 20 because that's how fast it moves. But milk it and love it and don't be afraid. I
Yeah.
don't know, Paul. Is that helpful in any way? I hope it
I
is.
think so. Absolutely,
Okay.
it's helpful. Yeah. I could only wish that I had that advice, 50 years ago, Um, but hey, it all worked out. I'm not complaining at all. But it's sometimes students need to hear the perspective of people who have made it. They've gone out there. They've pursued their dream, and whether it was working in radio, working in television, working in education, combination thereof. Sometimes I've often said you're not going to find all the answers in a textbook. I think from a very young age, that's what we're led to believe that
Absolutely.
you can open any book to any page and find the answer to the question. But in life, it's not necessarily in a
No, it
textbook.
doesn't that work that way. And I have to say this, Paul, because you to tie it up from how you started it, and it's like, could you have ever thought? No, but we're going to step ahead. We got to go step back. I was, I learned to communicate, and then you have to be adaptable. See what comes your way.
Hmm.
It's amazing. If the common denominator is you learning how to excel in communication.
Sure.
Well, Lord knows we didn't know there was an internet coming.
You're right. Yep, you're right. Well, Joe, that's it. We're at the end. That clock on the wall dictates all. Being radio and television guys ourselves, we know that the clock tells us, wrap it up, guys. I want to
Thank you,
thank you
Paul. I
so
love you,
much.
buddy. Thank
I
you,
love
Paul.
you too.
You're the
Thank you
best.
so much for being with us. And quickly, where can people find your books?
Wide Wide.world. That's the easy way of doing it because joebisicchia.com. You could do it that way, but it's hard to spell. It's one of those tough Italian names. Wide World. And thank you.
Thank you, Joe. All the best to you and your family and in your career. And let's do this again real soon. I would love to do that. All
All the
right,
best,
Joe.
everybody.
Joe Bisicchia, our guest here on this edition of the Philly Factor. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul Perrello. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll catch you next time around.